Hey, this is Sho, and thank you so much for checking out the video. Today I wanted to drop another first thoughts video on another demo I recently played, and that is going to be Deadcraft. So we're going to do this kind of a la potato flowers in full bloom and just talk a little bit about the gameplay, performance, and audio visual directions. Now, I'm going to be honest, Deadcraft sort of came out of nowhere. I didn't really hear much about this game at all until I saw, I think, like one or two articles mention it. It's not getting much coverage in the West, but it makes sense because, honestly, there is no Western website for this game. It just kind of popped on the eShop with a demo and everyone was like, hey, what's this? But there is a full-blown kind of Japanese and Chinese website for it. And this is the newest title by Marvelous and First Studios. So this is the team that is behind Daemon X Machina. I know Daemon X Machina is a bit of a polarizing game, but honestly for me, I loved it. It was Armored Core 3 with a more anime feel. And honestly, until From Software starts making Armored Core again and stops making Souls games, which is probably never going to happen, it's the best I got. Anyway, let's talk about Deadcraft. So, Deadcraft is a bit of an interesting mix. The general premise is that a meteor comes from the sky, crashes into Earth, and this meteor has the zombie virus, which means that we cannot cancel the apocalypse, and Mad Max happens. You yourself are Reed, a half-human, half-zombie hybrid, tasked with zombie hunting and finding the truth about your friend, which is why you have entered this place known as the Ark. Now, the gameplay itself is a top-down action game a la Diablo or Helldivers, which is a reference I will be making quite a few more times in this video. You have a fairly simple control scheme. I think it's like right trigger attacks. You can have the two weapons equipped. You have dodging, and you also have your Z moves, your zombie moves, which allow you to sort of have a bit of a fun little Infamous gameplay aspect. These are things such as bringing up shields to block attacks or bullets. You can also dash through enemies causing damage, and you have this giant sort of zombie arm claw you can use that just completely wipes the whatever's on the screen as long as you're aiming it in the right direction, unlike myself. But this is not only the aspect of the game, which is interesting. The game also provides a sort of survival management aspect. So you have a food and health and a water energy gauges which are linked. So you'll need to mitigate these as they'll go down over time. Basically, as your food gauge decreases, you become a little bit, it seems like you become a little bit more prone to attacks, but more importantly, when it reaches 0, you start losing life. And as for your water gauge, basically, you have your energy, which allows you to do attacks and running and just existing. If your water reaches 0, then you start losing energy, which is not cool. So you need to consume food and water in order to make sure these gauges stay high. You also have a very interesting kind of zombie-human scale, or gauge, I guess you can say. As you do things like drink human food, eat human food, drink human water, and do kind of human-based things, you basically have more of your humanity, which allows you to interact with people, but it does weaken your zombie powers, and it does turn you into a bit of a glass cannon. If, on the other hand, you decide to have more of the zombie foods, more of the zombie drinks, you have a lot more power, you get a lot more tanky, you get more access to your skills, but you become unable to actually interact with the other humans, which is very important because this game is technically a simulation RPG a la Fallout, or probably Wasteland is probably the best example, actually. Basically, you'll have quests that you'll be able to take in towns. There's like a quest board. You'll talk to people. There's shops. You'll kind of do your best to build up the town. There's also a nice skill tree system for crafting and upgrading, which I guess suppose like in real life, you get points based upon your actions and your experiences. So this isn't like a leveling system. Every time you till a field, you get SP. Every time you craft or you cook a new tomato skewer, you get SP. Every time you stomp a zombie's face, you get SP. So it's really nice that you don't have to rely too much on a leveling system. Rather, you just focus on getting SP through your daily actions or for your routines. And then, bam, you gain access to more skills, more upgrades, more buffs, and even new items and buildings to make. Speaking of which, there are base buildings that you have. So you kind of have a home base here. And this basically allows you to craft things like food, drink, you can make weapons, you can strengthen yourself up. There are also new types of buildings that you can make over time. Unfortunately, the demo, which is a big issue for me, is quite short. So you don't really get to see some of these new buildings in action. The most I think you have to make is a fire pit to do some cooking. But it seems like it's an interesting kind of base management system. You have to kind of build up your base to get the resources you need so your character can go out and do what they need to do. Finally, a la Helldivers, you're actually able to make items that allow you to change the battlefield. Now, for those of you who don't know Helldivers, it is kind of an old game. I think it's probably like, gosh, like 7 or 8 years old now. It was a PlayStation exclusive that was a top-down twin-stick shooter that basically had you play a Space Marine. But what made it so awesome was you had full customization of your character. So you can have them with abilities and skills to drop like tanks on the field that you and your team can ride. You can call special airstrikes. You could be a supporter with drones and so much stuff. And it seems like Deadcraft follows a very similar principle. Through crafting, you're able to make things like mines, fences, and while you can't access it in a demo, there's definitely skill trees for things like towers, like mini zombie tower defenses. And you're also actually able to make zombies, or I should say you grow them. Yes, you grow them. You literally prepare their bodies. You pick up a corpse, you prepare it as like a seed, and then you water it with zombie blood. And you can actually get access to zombies that you can throw with you on the field that will help you fight the battles. So it's really interesting and definitely charming in a certain way. I really wasn't expecting that. Now, as I mentioned, the big issue for me is that the demo's length is quite short. You only have access to, I think, about 3/4 of the first chapter, so you don't have the chance to experience any boss fights. But for being a short demo, I was surprisingly sucked in with it, as the core gameplay mechanic and the core gameplay loop just seems really fun. You know, you get up, you mitigate, you go, you hunt, you get skill points, you learn new things to build, different weapon types, different foods, and yeah, it's fun. And I think the plot itself is also kind of interesting. It has a nice kind of rugged, sarcastic feel, a la Mad Max, though it probably is a little bit too serious at times. So it's not really as loony as Borderlands is, despite its kind of audio cues. Speaking of audio and video, let's talk about performance real quick. Honestly, seems pretty solid in terms of the gameplay itself. No drops, not much for input delay, though I do feel that the controls are a little bit clunky. But honestly, for a game like this, I don't feel like it's too out of the ordinary. You can still kick all the butt you need. Now, there are some asset popping I've noticed, especially with the cutscenes. This game does take a very vibrant Borderlands-like approach to some of its wasteland imagery, which is fun and great, but yeah, it does sort of have issues with popping, as you may see on some of the videos I'm showing now. Honestly, it's charming in its own way. I don't really feel like it's a deal breaker for me. The audio is probably the weakest part. It's fairly typical. Most of the core characters have a significant amount of voiceovers, which is fantastic. I can get behind that. But the quality of the voiceovers is, I guess, so-so. I haven't really had too much in terms of like, whoa, this is nuts. The soundtrack and audio direction also feel pretty normal for a Mad Max, Fallout, Desert, Wasteland kind of deal. So nothing too big in terms of the audio side. But then again, the demo is quite short, so who knows what's going to be like after the first boss. So, with that said, that's going to be my first thoughts on Deadcraft, the demo here. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this game, and I had no expectations for it. But after playing it for probably about 5 or 6 hours now, this is actually something I might be looking into. And it has a good amount of strategy in there, along with your base management, resource management, and the fact you can manipulate your environment. Yeah, this is definitely maybe worth checking out, at least the demo. It is free, of course, the demo. So yeah, check it out and let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Deadcraft. And let me know if you want From Software to make an Armored Core again, because honestly, it's been far too long. All right, well, with that said, thanks so much for watching the video. This is Show, and I will catch you next time. Cheers!